Hey everybody, so today we're going to be changing front brake calipers on the 1974 Triumph TR6. The car had been sitting for over a year and the calipers were seized, so we're going to replace them with some classic gold new units from Moss Motors. These are reproduction calipers, but they're very high quality. And we're going to install a new set of the classic gold ceramic brake pads. They're low dust and they're usually quieter than the standard metallic pads. So anyway, let's get started and just kind of give you an idea of what to go through when you do this. First, we're going to start by removing the hairpins that hold the pad retaining pins in place. A lot of times, especially in an old car, these are going to be stuck a little bit, these pins, and you have to tap them out. Let's see how these come. Yeah, I'm going to have to tap them just a little bit. Sometimes grab them with some side cutters and just kind of walk them out like that. There we go. This side here is the one that's really stuck. The caliper seized the worst, so it might be a little difficult to get these pads out of here. We may just pull the caliper off with the pad still in place. Let's see if they want to come out. Give it a shot. Grab a couple of more tools here to make this a little easier. What's that?
I like your Triumph.
Oh, thank you.
Are you doing a YouTube video or something?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
just
cool.
YouTube and the replacing the brake calipers.
Cool.
Yeah, I
What year
do
is
that stuff from time to time. So.
What year is it?
74.
74. I had a friend that had one that worked on it. That's cool.
Thank you. Have a good day.
It's like,
One of my neighbors just stopped by to say hi. Tell me how much you like Triumph. Interesting with British cars, that happens a lot. And typically you hear, what I hear with all the different British cars I've had and worked on is somebody will tell you the story about how they owned one in school, or their uncle had one, or their first car was one. So, if you like attention, British car is a good way to go. We got pads out now. It's a minor amount of persuasion. So these were standard metallic pads that were in it, and we're going to replace them with the ceramics, as I said. So one of the things, or tricks I like to do too, is get the brake line broke loose before you go to take the caliper loose from the mounting bracket. That way it's still mounted, you know it'll come loose easy, then you just barely snug it back so you're not dumping fluid out of it while you're taking the caliper off. So what I do is I make sure I get it broke loose first, hopefully. There we go. Maybe not. This one might be a bit lace grip job. Alright, now we got to go to plan B. Now normally I'd be using a line wrench on this, but I'm doing this job at my house with just some basic hand tools I have here. At my shop I have a full selection of line wrenches, but I believe I can get it loose. You want to make sure you get a good grip on it so it doesn't slip. There we go. Now we got it broke loose with the vice grips, and we can go back and use a wrench to tighten it and remove it when we're ready. There we go. Alright, so now that we've done that, the next thing we'll do is break loose the mounting bolts. And by the way, that line fitting on a TR6 is a 7/16. The caliper mounting bolts are 3/4 inch. Remember, on your British cars there's very little metric unless something's been replaced, such as these brake calipers. The aftermarkets will have a metric 10mm bleed screw, but the originals will all be standard, or Whitworth actually, but you can usually use standard tools on them. So, we got our caliper mounting bolts broken loose. go ahead and get the other caliper out. Make sure it's correct before we go all the way. Which the box is marked correctly, so hopefully it is. Yep, this is the correct side. See, that's your classic gold calipers. Really pretty and very well done, put together. It's an exact replica of the original, like I said, other than the fact it utilizes metric fitting on the bleed screw. So then I'll take the plug out of this that comes in it, and that way when I take my old caliper off, I'll plug the hole in it, the line hole, so I don't lose all the fluid all over the ground. Go ahead and finish unbolting it. There's one. Have it mostly loose, we'll go ahead and take our line loose. And I've got a little catch bucket down there to catch any fluid dripping, plus I have some cardboard down. Typically, what most most likely you're going to use for brake fluid in the British cars now. In the old days, we used the Girling fluid, and that's not available anymore, as far as I know. But now we use any of your quality .4 brake fluid. We've got our line loose. You can see the fluid dripping out of it. Get our last bolt all the way out, and we can take the caliper off. There's our last caliper bolt. Go ahead and put our plug in the caliper so we don't have fluid dripping everywhere. Get our new caliper here. And then start it so we're not losing all the fluid out of the master cylinder. Make sure we get it started straight. It's easier to cross thread these, so you want to make sure you get it in there straight before you put a wrench on it. Get that in place. Take a wrench and just snug that line a little bit. One of the things I like about making these videos, especially on cars like this, is kind of point out to people that maybe do this for a hobby that a lot of these jobs are, not as difficult as maybe some people would lead you to believe. But just simple tools, take your time, and they're really not that difficult. I always like to put a little lubricant back on the threads of the bolts before I put them in. And on the TR6, the shield on the back of the brakes and the bracket for the brake line are held on by the caliper mounting bolt. So it's a little fidgety to make sure you get it all lined up when you go to put the bolts back in. But it's not too difficult. It's again one of those things, when you do it, you want to make sure that you keep the, you get the bolts started straight and don't cross through. I believe we got the top one started. We'll put a little lubricant on the lower bolt. We can get her started. Good. And once you turned it in 3 or 4 turns by hand, you put your wrench on it, you should know if it feels right that it's going in and it's not cross-threaded. Nice and smooth to turn. To do on the top one, because it is bracketed, I'll break this line loose just so when I tighten this bolt down that bracket can find its correct place and not be in a bind. Put the line in a bind. Once I get it snug, then I'll tighten the line back down. Here we go. And we just finished tightening our mounting bolts. I'm going to do a glove change because I got brake fluid on these and I don't want to have brake fluid on my hands when I put the brake pads in. Sorry to walk away from the camera like that. I wasn't smart enough in the beginning to remember to have all this stuff out here. Not a professional YouTuber. I do like to think I'm a professional mechanic though. My delivery. Okay. That'll still work. Alright, so now we're going to grab our brake pads. We actually already installed, I already installed the other brake pads on the other side earlier, other caliper and brake pads I should say, bled that side. That was on a different day because just kind of fit this stuff in when I have the time. We'll get our pads in there, make sure you put them in the correct direction. You'd be surprised how many times I've seen people do that, put the pads in backwards. In fact, we bought a race car that had been raced with the brake pads in the wrong direction, with the metal side facing into the rotor, not the friction side. And I'd seen it on street cars before, but that was the first time I'd seen anybody who had done it on a race car. But it actually had ground the rotors, scored the rotors, and they had raced it with it like that. Alright, now we got our pins in to hold the calipers or the pads in place. And we have our little hairpin clips. I'm just going to get rid of this glove because it's doing nothing. Our little hairpin clip that goes through the little hole on the inside end of the pin. Push that into place. Get your other one. Do the same thing. And that's it. That swapped the caliper out. It's bolted in tight. Only thing left to do is bleed it. The bleeder screw's here on the top. I'm going to get my lovely wife out here shortly to help me bleed it. But that's pretty straightforward. Normally what I'll do, and I will show you that, as I said, I believe these are metric. Yeah, this is a 10 millimeter. I break the bleeder screw loose and let it gravity bleed. So just leave the bleeder open until you get, like right now I'm starting to get fluid dripping out. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's fluid dripping out of it. That means the caliper's getting full. So it'll purge the air out of it naturally by gravity. Then all we have to do is do a couple of pumps to get the last couple of air bubbles out of it. That's all there is to it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and until the next video, hope you enjoyed it and learned something. Thanks.